We're going to go ahead and get the council meeting going for this evening, and we will start with roll call.
I'm coming, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Mayor LaBarre,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Case,
Here.
Councilmember Connors,
Here.
Councilmember Nakai,
Here.
Councilmember Neal.
That was me.
Oh, he's not here.
Oh, he's going to be late.
Okay. Councilmember Ott,
Present.
Councilmember Zulawaga.
Here.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, this evening we're starting out with item 3A, and it's a presentation from Keep Woodland Park Beautiful Committee on the proposed median improvements. And Grace Johnson is our presenter. Thanks.
Okay, good evening, council. I know it's been kind of a long couple months, but I have a fun thing. So, as you may or may not know, I'm the staff liaison to the Keep Woodland Park Beautiful Committee. And a few meetings ago, they came and presented an idea that they had for median improvements, and it seemed very timely. It's kind of been something that's been brought up here and there by council, citizens, staff, etc. So they are going to present some recommendations for the medians tonight. Tonight we have, I think, 3. We have Sarah Horwood, Claudia Miller, and Jeanette Horwood, and Claudia and Jeanette are going to present tonight. So I will pass it off to them. You guys, Sarah will on the slide for you. No, next slide.
Great, okay. Okay, I'm Claudia Miller, and this is,
Good evening, I'm Jeanette Horwood.
and I've lived in Woodland Park for 23 years, and this last year and a half, I've had a joyous opportunity being on the Keep Woodland Park Beautiful Committee. It has been a special experience, and I want to express an appreciation for the hard work that Sarah Horwood puts in, and also Cassidy Gilliness, and also Grace Johnson for helping us so much with actualizing some of the activities we planned. Tonight, Jeanette and I would like to share an idea that we both had about a way we might further beautify Woodland Park, and that is with medians and working with these scenic beauties that could actually draw a great attention as we're coming through our town. I don't know if you received papers on an article that was in the Courier. Thank you. And it really meant a lot to me. I read it in October, and it was a young gal, Ruth Wiseman, and she wrote about our town being in several of the towns in Teller County being real Colorado mountain towns. And the way she distinguished this is our town is actively busy with the citizens all year long, where our brethren towns that are tourist towns often are just seasonal, and it makes a big difference in the type of planning and development of a town. And this distinguishing characteristic, I think, is shown in the way that you as a council have put in these beautiful lights this year, the Christmas lights, and beautified our city with that. And it's sort of a foreshadowing of all these wonderful activities that we're going to have. And you did this not for the tourists, you did it for the citizens. And I really commend you for that. It was kind of the real McCoy. So in our proposal on the development of the scenic medians, the main goal is to create an authentic representation of our town that will create a sense of pride for our citizens of Woodland Park, as well as add another identity. You know, we're known as the city above the clouds, and We'd like to also be known as one that denotes the magnificent wildlife in our midst that distinguish our city for its how much it's steeped in nature. And we think that the timing aligns well with the development of the DDA and the investors in the vicinity that are working on woodland stations such as that Tava House restaurant, the culinary school, the event center, climbing gyms, and the green space. So we also feel that the medians will complement another angle of history along with the historic relics of the adjacent city-owned Brookstone Park by imparting significant wildlife in our historic past. And I'd like, Jeanette is going to share some of the details of ideas for the meetings.
Well, good evening. I'm Jeanette Horwood, and I've been a resident of Woodland Park for over 5 years and currently serve as a member on the Keep Woodland Park Beautiful Committee. We'd like to propose beautifying the central medians in Woodland Park, beginning at the McDonald's stoplight and then at each alternate median, continuing through town up to West Street. And as I'm sure all of you are aware that we do have an abundance of spectacular wildlife and in and around Woodland Park, and we'd like to propose having one large replica of either a deer, elk, moose, bear, as examples positioned on the medians. And these could be of natural replicas or the more modern, colourful replicas. Each statue would benefit from having uplights so that at night time they were very visible. And once they're placed in their position, they would be little to no maintenance. The infrastructure is already in place and some of the medians already have boulders and several small trees, some of which are already dead. So it would be nice if they were removed and replaced with low maintenance, deer resistant and drought resistant shrubbery. As you can see from the display, and it's certainly not to size, a large sign showing our wildlife would look very attractive. We currently have a wolf replica up by the city market stoplight. So these additional statues would be a wonderful addition to the town. Manitou Springs and Green Mountain Falls have their wonderful art communities and their sculptures, and we think that this would be a great representation of Woodland Park, showing our native mountain wildlife that we're very fortunate to live amongst. And it would be a lasting memory for our visitors and people traveling through our town. And it would also beautify Woodland Park for the residents. Any consideration to this proposal would be greatly received. Thank you.
We also have a slide on the planning phases, and what we recognize is that it would take a lot of work, coordination with the city and CDOT. CDOT has worked with other communities and putting in statues. We were thinking of budget approval, the idea of grants, and the bit on the implementation of the timelines. It was interesting to see how well the traffic was orchestrated when they were putting up the Christmas lights a week ago. I thought that was really cool. So we recognize that, and we propose that there be a committee put together, possibly with the city and maybe working with our committee a bit and getting some professionals in. We have talked to other city people that have in other cities who have, like just yesterday, I was talking to someone in Las Vegas, and they put some of their statues on the freeway exits. But a lot of communities do that, trying to theme up their city. And so I think it's a real possible thing, and we just hope that you'll let us help in any way we can. We'd love to see that done, and I think it'll make a big difference. And I also want to say something wonderful about Jeanette. This last summer, she is a of how to create gardens and landscapes with wildlife in mind. And also she came right over, she did that nice little diorama. And so we do have an artist in our midst. So that's about it for us.
Thank you. That was awesome. Did you make that all by yourself? Like, did like plaster of Paris or whatever to do that? Did you? That's awesome.
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you again to them. These are volunteers and they've spent a lot of time and thought a lot about it a lot and really appreciate that. And also just so you know, in January, the committee is going to be presenting their beautification award for 2022 and their annual report for 2022. So that's coming.
Thank you, ladies. Thanks, Grace. I like that diorama too. That's cool. Yeah, right. Right.
Madam Mayor,
Yeah.
what's the, I know we don't comment on presentations, but what's the actual mechanical steps that we would go through to move something like that along through the process?
Well, I think that they would have to come up with a financial plan for it and then bring it to us to take a look at what the numbers would be. And then we'd have to see if we could budget it in or if it's already in the budget.
Well, and I don't know if we have a specific dollar amount, but as part of the 2023 budget, council requested to add some funding to beautify the medians. And this is perhaps somewhat serendipitous for that purpose. As Grace and I talked about that, it's great timing. So it would be helpful to understand maybe ballpark what that might cost. I don't know if we have a specific number, maybe Ben does.
We don't have a specific number for this particular project, but for the median improvements under the street concrete item, there's quite a bit in there to do things like this, so.
So yeah, we would appreciate the opportunity to chat further and understand a little bit more what all would go into that life size, of course. And then we can go from there and bring it back to y'all at some point.
Yeah, very good. So because we'd need the cost of the sculptures and the cost to put them in, the labor, all of that. Suzanne.
I've also already received a text message from someone that heard your presentation from the Arts Alliance and said they'd like to work with them.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Very good.
So maybe they can get together with the Arts Alliance.
Yeah, that would be great. Any further questions?
This new grant thing that you're doing, is there a doorway in there for something on this?
I don't know. We'll look into, I don't know if there would be for median improvements. There's a lot of infrastructure dollars coming. I don't know which of that might be applicable. Unless there's a specific grant you were,
I don't
so
know.
there's a few of them we got out there.
I know, yeah. I know that you hired somebody for that, and I just wondered, they spoke about.
Yeah,
grants, so-
we can ask that question of our grant analyst, certainly.
That's all.
Yeah.
Okay, so under item number 4, with additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda, I just want to let council know that on item 5B is actually, excuse me, is actually item 10A. So we're not going to have a 5B and it's on the agenda under 10A. So just so you guys know. We're going to go ahead then and move on to the consent calendar. And all we have is A, and I don't know, council, did you have any questions about A? Or can we go ahead and let Suzanne present and we can make the motion?
All right.
So I just need a motion from council to approve the November 17th, 2022 regular city council meeting minutes, which I will say were 32 pages long.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Council, you may vote.
Suzanne, I haven't been able to bring everything up yet, so I'll have to do a verbal.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay, we'll get Grace to assist. And can I get a verbal from you? Thank you. Okay. Thank you, council. Motion has passed unanimously.
Okay, we're gonna move on to item 6, public comment on items not on agenda. And Suzanne, do you have anyone signed up for that?
I do. I have one person signed up and it's Sharon Richardson.
Okay,
We're not on the agenda. Sure. Just give me 1 second.
thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good evening. My name is Sharon Richardson and I'm a resident of Woodland Park. Tonight, I'm announcing the recently registered Woodland Park Community Group Protecting Residential Property Rights. We are a diverse group of Woodland Park residents. We are nonpartisan, and we have members affiliated from all major political parties. We're non-denominational, and we have members affiliated with many local churches and other religious and non-religious organizations. Most importantly, we are all residents of the city of Woodland Park. In the best interests of our wonderful Woodland Park community, we're exercising our constitutional rights by appealing a recent council decision. Our current project is focused on asking the Woodland Park City Council to appeal an ordinance passed on November 17th, 2022. With enough signatures, council will be asked to decide to repeal their approved ordinance or allow the citizens to decide by sending the measure to a public vote. This is the constitutional process of referendum. We will be petitioning for signatures over the next several weeks. And if you are a registered voter in Woodland Park, please consider signing our petitions. Our website will be up and running in just a couple days. So please check it out for more information on our community group, our intentions, and a bit of history on this issue. Our website is protectresidentialpropertyrights.org, and our email address is prwp.22@gmail.com. Thank you, council members and madam, for allowing us to introduce our new community resource.
Thank you. Suzanne, do you have anyone else?
No, ma'am.
No one on Zoom?
No.
Okay. We are on to 7A, which is the telecommunications master plan, and going to go ahead and let our city manager introduce it and then hand it off to HR Green.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So we have returning to us from I think back in September is when y'all were here last. HR Green, Ken Price, Deb Zelenak, and John Merritt. Thank you for coming back, guys. And I will turn it over to, I guess, Ken, and we'll get it started.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michael. And thank you, council and mayor, for allowing us to come before you this evening. We're going to present the telecommunications master plan and then spend a little bit of time talking about the next steps. Hopefully you all had a chance to review the telecommunications master plan.
Sorry, I don't have the.
I'm not going to spend much time digging into the details. So we'll just kind of do an executive summary of the executive summary. Okay, awesome. So again, joining me this evening is John Merritt behind me and Dave Zelenak. And again, we're all from HR Green.
Sir, could I just ask you a question? Are you going to be following what we have in our council packet? The presentation, is it going to follow what we
Yes.
have? So we can follow along
Yes,
in the packet?
yes,
Okay.
absolutely. I think you included that, right?
I did.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Mike.
Well, not the presentation itself, but
Just the basic, okay, fine.
it's all the same material.
Yeah.
It's just summarized here, same order and everything.
So again, we'll do an overview of all of the completed tasks. We'll talk a little bit about the conceptual network design, specifically the one that you all chose, if you remember back in September. And we'll talk about the cost estimates for that design. Again, it's the one that you all decided, gave us direction to move forward with. We'll talk a little bit about the business models and again, about the specific one that you all chose.
Sarah.
And then we'll talk about the recommendations, and the recommendations is really the meat, if you will, of the telecommunications plan. And those are actually the next steps. So we'll combine those two as we go along. So overview of what we've accomplished so far is that we put together the conceptual network diagrams, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. We developed costs associated with those different designs. And remember, it was an aerial, a underground, and a hybrid. And then we engaged some of your stakeholders, including city staff and anchor institutions here in the city. We sent to you and you filled out a visioning survey and a competing value survey. And then we had 2 visioning sessions with you, if you may, as you may recall. And then all of that led to the development of that telecommunications master plan. So this was the conceptual design. So again, I mentioned the aerial and the underground and the hybrid. And these were the anchor institutions that you really wanted us to involve in the design. And most of them, as you can tell, are city facilities. And that led to the design that you selected, which is again, the underground option. And I should point out that the left of this slide is the north part of Woodland Park. So we took Woodland Park and rotated it. Okay. That was so we could fit it on the slide. Okay. And then these are the estimated costs for the underground part of the project. And I'm going to throw it to John because John wanted to share some additional information about these costs.
Good evening. I created these costs based on what you guys paid for to put the pipe into Baldwin and into Kelly, which was roughly $50 a foot. Now those costs were based on the fact that there's a state law, which is pronounced SUE, Subsurface Utility Engineering, which requires a huge study on the front end that basically you have to find all the utilities if anything that you're going to cross that's greater than 2 feet in depth. The way we did to get that project and move it along was we put them in at 2 feet, thereby avoiding the SUE requirements. The problem is it was expensive. But I use that for your estimated costs for this. I think if you work it right, when you do the design, you do the SUE in advance, I'm thinking you can cut that cost substantially. I don't ever as an engineer want to be the low bidder. But I'm pretty convinced that these prices will hold up. And in fact, you might be, instead of $50 a foot, you may be seeing the conduit being put in around $20 a foot, which is a lot of difference. But it depends heavily on whether you have rock. But what they found, from what I could understand on Kelly and on Baldwin, was they found very little rock. And so pushing pipe instead of open cutting like they did under the new asphalt before the asphalt was put down makes it a whole lot cheaper, but didn't have the time to do that, to get it into those projects. So we took the shortcut, did it at 2 feet to meet the state law. But just so you know, I use those kind of prices, but I think they're high. So I'd say not to exceed these amounts.
Any questions?
Yeah, I just have one, John. On that project, we were doing resurfacing and everything, so we were already disrupting the environment there. Where you have projected the other underground work, it's all existing things that are existing, so you're still thinking it'll come under even the fact that,
If you do, my thought is in advance, you do the SUE investigation, which includes potholing to find all the utilities. You find out their depths so that you can separate it. You then push all the pipe in. You don't cause the advantage of what you did on this one was you overlaid the whole thing, so it all disappeared. On streets, you're not doing that. It will allow the pipe to go in with little damage, just where the pull boxes are in the push sites, but it's really minor. But if you do the SUE and you do some exploratory hole drilling along the way to find out where the rock is, if it is or isn't, you can tell contractors pretty exact what they're doing. If you take away the questions, your prices are going to get much better. I'd also separate it from the contractor for doing the construction work and make it a standalone and bid it as a standalone. I think you'll get better prices. But this one had to be this way, or I would have delayed everything for a year.
thank you for clarifying that. That's
Sure.
real helpful.
Thank you. So just a reminder again, these were the 5 business models that we talked about, everything from fully municipalized, like a Longmont, all the way down to a full private broadband, which is what you pretty much have in place today. And as you may recall, you chose, go to the next slide, please. You chose service model number 3, which is the hybrid, which is where the city would construct the middle mile network to interconnect initially all of the city facilities. The city would then own the physical assets, so the fiber and the conduit, but then you would reach out to the private sector and bring in potential private sector partners to operate it, maintain it, and then to deliver services over it. And then potentially, I'm sorry, potentially, the private sector partners could then lease fiber on that backbone and then put in their own fiber out to the what we call the last mile, which would be to the residents and businesses. Okay. So these were the 9 recommendations that came about as a result of all of the work that we did. So I'll just run through them quickly here, and on the next slides, we'll delve into them a little bit deeper as they become tasks or next steps. Okay, so evaluate funding alternatives, and we did some of that already in the telecommunications master plan. We looked at 5 potential funding sources in there. But what this next step will be, and again, we'll talk more about it here in a second, we'll do a deep dive into each of those programs and other programs, and we'll share with you how you can go about applying for those funds. Map existing infrastructure. We'll talk more about that here in a moment. We'll do some provider outreach. So we want to see at the early stages here, we want to get in front of them the fact that, this is what we're looking at doing, and try to generate some interest on their behalf as to whether they want to participate from the private sector side of things. Then we will do a market assessment. So we'll actually go out and look at what services are actually available. And this actually is more along the lines of what the providers advertise. Well, the fortunate thing for you is that in 2021, you ran a citizen survey about broadband services. So what we will be able to do once as part of this step, is we'll be able to take that survey that you all did and compare it to what we see the service delivery from the provider standpoint. So we'll either be able to verify or not verify what the providers are saying, okay? And then develop public policies. So we'll look at your right-of-way regulations at this point, and probably come back to you with recommendations for a dig once policy, and those types of things. So that's what that step is all about. We'll explore and establish P3s. Those are private-public partnerships. So we hopefully generate some interest with recommendation number 3, so that when we get to recommendation number 6, we know who we need to send. It's called a request for expressions of interest. So we'll hopefully know who we need to send that to, and that they'll be able to respond to that. And then we'll be able to have some idea of who wants to play and who doesn't. Okay. And then we'll finalize design details and costs, and that's where potentially the SUE issue that you heard John talk about will come into play. And then all of that being said, we'll have some really good costs that we can then go after grants to help cover those costs. So that's really number 8. And then number 9 is optional. If you want, you can take those grant dollars and actually start building something. Okay. All right, so let's delve into each of these and talk about what they mean in terms of tasks. So next steps, this is the first recommendation, or task 1, and you should have seen that in the proposal that I think was also shared with you. So we'll be doing some detailed research about those different funding sources, and also how to go about applying for those. The second part is taking a look at creating existing maps. Now, this is we'll do this at the same time that we're doing that provider outreach piece, because hopefully when we reach out to the providers, they might be willing to share maps of their existing infrastructure. If they want to, however, and sometimes they are not willing to share. So we may have to work with your team, your legal team, to develop NDAs that we can share with them, and then we can get that information. And I mentioned again the provider outreach, and this will take place, like I said, about the same time as we're doing the mapping of existing infrastructure. And it's again just to reach out to them and say, this is what the city is doing. Is there any general interest in playing? And then also to make that request if they'll provide their maps of their existing infrastructure. The market assessment, again, it will reach out to the websites for the service providers to try to determine what services they say they provide, how much that coverage is within Woodland Park, and what the costs are. And then it will take that information and we'll compare it against the information that you all gathered in your 2021 citizen survey, just to verify whether it's real or not. The develop public policies piece, I mentioned it earlier. We'll take a look at your street cut policy and if you have a pavement degradation policy, and then we'll try to develop what's called a co-location or a dig once policy for you. And then last but not least, we'll look at putting together some fiber construction specifications for you. That way you can say, this is the type of conduit that we want. This is the type of fiber that we want. These are the type of tests that we want run before you hand that over to us, that sort of thing. So that's what the construction specifications are all about. And then it leads into this establishing of the P3s. So again, we'll use what's called the request for expressions of interest process, and send that out to those private providers that we already spoke to, and others certainly. It'll be, just like an RFP process, except it's just asking for expressions of interest. And then we'll gather all that information together, and through meetings with you all, probably with the city manager, we'll try to narrow that list down to, those that are really interested and those that we're interested in partnering with. And then again, I mentioned that, the next step, we'll finalize that detailed design. That's quite a bit of work. It's a lot of GIS work and potentially some field work. John may have to make a few trips up here relook at infrastructure and things like that. And then as part of that, we'll also develop design costs, and those design costs will not just be for material, but that will be for labor and the whole shoot and match. Okay, it's a pretty in-depth spreadsheet. And then we'll do a financial analysis, a pro forma. And this again is a very deep dive into what you can expect on return on investment if you were to lease the fiber and things like that. So it'll project that out X number of years, and then so it'll all be in graphic form and spreadsheet form. And of course, all these materials are yours. So at the end of this project, all of this stuff will come your direction. Okay. And the next step is to go back and look at those funding sources that we looked at task 1, and actually start seeing where we can plug in some of the funding needed for this project, and actually start applying for grants. And then last but not least is, again, the optional step of actually building it. So these are the deliverables, if you will, if you were to have us come in and help you build this, which we have done. These would be the things that we would do. So we would do a field survey. The OSP stands for outside plant network design. We would work within your permitting process. We would also put together an RFP for a general, and then we would step in and be your owner rep with that general. So we would make sure that things happened. And then we would do the contract administration, and then the project inspection. We call that project observation. Okay. So this is the proposed timeline for everything up to that task 9. So as I said earlier, that the provider outreach, it's actually going to happen 1 month before we actually start doing the mapping of the existing infrastructure. That mapping takes about 3 months of time. And while that's going on, we'll go ahead and start doing the market assessment, and we can also start working on developing a public policies. So a lot of things happening at the same time. Now, step number 6 there, explore and establish partnerships. And I didn't mention when we were on that slide, but this not only involves potential partnerships with the private sector, but this involves a partnership with the public sector as well, specifically CDOT. So you can see that there's a 6-month timeline there, and that's how long it's going to take if we do that fiber trade. Remember, we talked about the fiber trade back in September. The potential fiber trade between CDOT and the city for some fiber. It'll take up to 6 months to make that happen. And that's what CDOT told us. That process usually takes 6 months. So we would initiate that process on month 1, hoping that it would be done again by month 6. So that's the timeline, and these are the projected costs. I won't necessarily dig into these. So again, these are the 9 tasks, and you can associate them directly with the 9 recommendations from the plan. So at this point, questions?
I have a question. So on the on funding, so I know that there's some providers out there that would like to play that have reached out, and they would do their own grant monies. They would request those grants and that sort of thing. To reduce this cost and offer some bennies, if you will, to us to make it cheaper.
Right. Yeah, and interestingly enough, if I can just jump in there, there are actually 2 state departments that have funds available for both sides of that. So DOLA has money available. That's the Department of Local Affairs. They have a broadband fund, and those dollars are available to you, to the city. There are 3 different levels of grant available there. There's an administrative grant, which can be approved by your regional administrator. It doesn't have to go to the board or anything, and that you can get up to $50,000 for an administrative grant. Then there's a mid-level grant, and that's up to a $1 million grant. And that has to go to the board. And then there's a $2 million grant, and that one too has to go to the board. But those are dollars available to you as a city. Then DORA, the Department of Regulatory Agencies, has its own broadband fund, and those dollars are available only to the private sector. And we see many times in Colorado that a municipality go after the DOLA stuff, and their private sector partner or partners will go after the DORA stuff.
Right, thanks for explaining that. So I'm tracking all that. But in your presentation, you had going after the grants prior to engagement with the private sector. So
No, it's just a review of the grants.
okay,
Yeah,
because I would want them, if you were able to partner up, I would want them to go after their grants, and that administrative grant you're talking about. Your fee was what, 69,000, I believe,
Mhm.
and that administrative grant of 50,000 can actually cover this phase 2, because I believe this is phase 2. Am I correct?
yes.
Okay, so that would cover this phase 2 or a very large portion of it, minus $19,000. Right?
Yes.
So
One other thing where we're gonna look at grants. Two of your long runs.
can you speak in the microphone, John, so they can get that recorded?
I'm sorry. Two of your long runs, one runs to your water treatment plant and up to the reservoir, and the other one runs to your sewage treatment plant. There are funds available in those categories also that you need to look at. I'm not real familiar with them. I just know there are funds out there. And basically, if you get those, you can knock off a big hunk of the cost of the back because of how far away they are. So you can cut the city bill quite substantially with those funds. So that's part of the initial figuring out what grants are available, and which ones are worth going after.
Okay, so it might be a little premature to ask this question, but if you're looking at $1.8 million up to this, construct the core network, if you could ballpark it for us with grants, what do you think that cost might end up as an end state to the city?
Could be as low as $200,000. It could be half of it. It's really difficult to say, but I would say figure $500,000 max.
Okay, thank you.
Assuming you get the grants, and I don't see why not. There are plenty of them out there. Plus, that isn't even dealing with the fact that some of the providers may be willing to put in the network. And part of what we need to do in that process is look out for your interest. Because what they'd love to do is put the network in, hold it exclusively, and give you 12 fibers. And that's not what you want to do.
Oh, I'm sure they would. But grant cycles with the materials, we know that some of those materials are, we could be waiting 24 months just to get the materials. And I know that with grants, oftentimes there's some strings attached that the money has to be spent within a certain amount of time.
Right.
So I would want to make sure that if we did get that, we got those grant funds, that could be used in the amount of time that it needs to be used. We didn't lose that money before they started their work.
I think one of the things is if you actually go out. You can tell how much this I do. I think if you go out and actually bid and put out contracts for the materials, I think a lot of times that will cover the need for spending the money that you've encumbered it, and you're good to go from that standpoint. Then it's just a wait.
Okay, and then my final thing is on phase 2, there is some outreach to industry, to private industry for this, but it's actually phase 3 of your plan where you actually do the coordination and that aspect where it takes the city out of it, and there's no favoritism for. It's just that whoever's the best, you guys would decide that. What does that phase 3 plan cost if we get to that? Do you have an idea?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have a better idea if you look at number 7 there. We'll probably have a better idea of what those costs are because we'll see labor and construction costs, everything, materials all built into that. Dave, did you want to? Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
One thing that I may want to add also is actually 2 things. One, I had a conversation yesterday with the state broadband office And we've talked to them loosely about Woodland Park. I think we spent about an hour or so not too long ago with them. In a conversation I was having with them yesterday about Lower Arkansas is doing kind of a multi-agency approach there. They also suggested that one of the intriguing new twists to reducing your funding liability, the local funding cost, is to put the conduit in at whatever cheap price. And as John said, Baldwin's a great example. And then you can use that, the value of it. You may pay $10 a foot to put it in. It may be worth 50. And you can use the value, you can assign the $50 value, because that's what it's really worth, as your local match in the project. And so let's say it's a 75-25 split, the feds or CBO, the Colorado Broadband Office, bring in 75% of the money. Your 25% may be based on the value, not your cost. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
So yeah, that's a nice twist. Also keep in mind that when it comes to the financing piece of it, is that what Ken will be running also, it will include not just your out-of-pocket costs, but your revenues coming in. So it's revenue inbound and cost outbound. Keep in mind that you can rent this infrastructure and then sock the money away and put it in your general fund, or put it into other kinds of related services. That's up to you. But it's not just we're giving money into it. It's a two-way cash flow.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Ken, I have a question on that same slide. Is task 5 on page 6 in our, or page 157 in our, it says here that the city has the ability to make key public policy decisions. So, and then you go into communities are frequently asked to leverage staff, equipment, and time in order to support contractors. So 2 things. One is, it seems to me like there really isn't much public policy to set, because you're already setting a framework here. Can you talk about where the engagement is with city council and city staff in this process to set any public policy?
What I will start with is reviewing your ordinances, et cetera, affecting the right of way today. And that's really the starting point for the development. What I call a one-stop shop. It's a document. It's called the right of way regs for Woodland Park. So in there will be all of the existing stuff that's already in the city municipal code. That again is my starting point. And then I will put in there other things for you to think about, like a dig once policy, or there's a really neat thing that you can do right now. You can charge ahead of time for degradation of your pavement. Whenever anybody digs into your streets, it degrades the life plan for that particular stretch of road. In other words, it's going to need to be repaved a lot sooner than if somebody hadn't dug into it. Does that make sense? So you can charge what's called a pavement degradation fee for every one of those projects where someone digs into your road. And that fee will be based on what's called the pavement index of that particular stretch of road. And that's based on the age of the road. And you can charge that fee as part of your permit fee for them digging into your road. And you can take that fee and stash it in the bank so that when you do have to repave it, you've already got money in the bank to pay for it.
Okay, so then leveraging staff in your bid process or the cost of the project, what sort of staff time do you envisage it's going to take to answer your questions, get the necessary research, do all this? And is that factored into here in terms of our staffing budget and what we have already on our plate to deal with?
Just like I did for the phase 1 piece, I will come to staff, probably Ben, and I will ask for a lot of information. And hopefully that information is already there. So all he has to do is send me PDFs or send me a web link where I can find it. That's
Go ahead. Excuse me, Mr. Lawson. There are 3 numbers in here, the one approximately 1.8 million, the 69,800 and the $50,000. Those 3 numbers should be familiar to you. What do we have in the budget right now and what amount or what we have in the budget, whatever that is that aligned to the 50, the 69 or the 1.8?
It's a great question. So we don't have any dollars budgeted for this phase yet. We got the only one we're looking at for right now that's really relevant as I see it is the 69,800. That's to initiate this phase. So we don't have any dollars set aside. There is quite a bit of grant dollars available, as was mentioned. The $50,000, I think that's
The 2%.
I'm sorry.
That's the 2% share of a bigger project.
So maybe, so I think, just to make sure we're all on the same page, I think we're talking about the DOLA grant, that's the impact fund grant that goes into that typically funds half of whatever the project cost is. So if this were an eligible project, that would get us about, $35,000, a little bit less. The rest of it, we would need to find we do have some American Rescue Plan dollars remaining that are not appropriated and not allocated yet. I think that would definitely cover the balance of that, whatever DOLA wouldn't cover. It wouldn't cover all of the 69,800, but pretty darn close. So our intent would be to look for additional grant dollars. Once we get that plan, we would come back, we'd get the contract with HR Green underway and then go from that point. But right now, because of the timing with the budget and then with the cost estimate here, there's nothing in there right now. Now, we're going to talk about the budget later tonight. If you wanted to appropriate funds for that, we could do that here. Kind of at the 11th hour, I think. But the plan was to come back and give you the plan, the idea for getting that money.
Yeah. And 50,000
Supplemental. We could definitely do a supplemental.
Grant money. So we're looking at 90,000. Yeah,
Exactly. That's why I was.
Yeah, we would need to do a supplemental either way because just the technicality of the budget process. But yeah, it may take it out of our fund reserve, or we may just have to appropriate the grant money, but we'll make it all crystal clear when we get word back. So I think that kind of work is right up the alley of the DOLA grant. I'm guessing a lot of other communities have done that.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
great. So, yeah, I would think our chances of that are pretty good.
Any further questions, council?
And so I guess what I would ask of council tonight is a consensus on moving forward and finding that funding. And then once we get that locked down, I would assume we'd bring a contract for HR Green. Imagine that'd be a single source contract because they've done the work so far.
Right.
You have my consensus.
Well, Aaron, you probably already have this number, don't you, as far as what sort of balance is left in the AARP or American Rescue?
I believe there's approximately 60,000 not appropriated.
So about 9,000 shy.
Correct. So yes.
Yes. Great. Thank you, council. And thank you, gentlemen, for being up here. We appreciate it. Great work so far. We're excited to keep it going.
Thank you. Thank you
Yes.
for placing your trust in us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I almost couldn't see you there because of that huge deer.
That was a VW bug.
What I want to know is,
Yeah, it's cool.
what I want to know is, can you put a dinosaur out there?
Right.
We got them a little further down the mountain.
Okay, we're moving on to item 8, ordinance on initial postings. We have none. So we are off to item 9A. And that is an approval of a retail liquor store license. And our clerk, Suzanne Leclerc, is going to present.
Thank you, Mayor Labar. This evening, we have a transfer of a liquor license, and that transfer of the liquor license is for Gold Hill Wine and Liquors located at 797 Gold Hill Place South, Woodland Park, Colorado 80863. I think everybody knows if I just say Gold Hill Liquors, you all know where that is. The applicant's name is Melissa, and I hope I say this right, Nuanes. So Melissa and her husband, Michael, are back there in the audience. I'm going to invite you to come up to the podium. They're here with us this evening. They've driven down from Denver to talk with council. And just to let you know a little bit of background on the license before they start, they are an LLC and they have a current sales tax license and FEIN number. A petition of needs and desires is not necessary in this case because it's been an existing business for a long time now. We only do petitions when it's a new location for a new business. The location has been licensed, as I said, for many, many years. The location is eligible to be licensed and the nuances have a possession of the property that's documented in a lease that expires February 19, 2027. The application was submitted on October 6, 2022. The subject property was posted on November 21st, 2022 as required by law. The public notice was published on the city's website, November 21st. Character of the applicants is not an issue for this hearing. All applicable fingerprints, FBI, CBI checks have been done and everything is great. All of the fees have been paid, and following the public hearing and hearing from Melissa and Michael, staff recommends approval of this transfer of liquor license. So I'd like to invite them to talk a little bit about what they're gonna do.
Okay, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. I can't hear myself, so can you hear me? Okay, great. I own Business Brokerage Services. I am a intermediary for the buyer and the seller. The buyer happens to be my wife. Other than being my wife, she is of no relation. But other than that, so I facilitated the sale between the old regime and the new regime. And I'd like to introduce to you Melissa Nuanes. She is applying for the retail liquor license transfer. Colorado native and an owner of several businesses in our state. This is the first business she has purchased in your fine city, but she owns a hotel, an ATM route, some commercial cleaning businesses, and of course she owns the brokerage with me. And she does have prior liquor experience. She owned a liquor store between 2017 and 2019 in Adams County, Colorado. It was called, what was it called? Berkeley Village. Thank you. It was called Berkeley Village, and where she had no liquor violations. Gold Hill Liquor is a 5,063 square foot retail liquor store that services and sells off-premises alcohol to the citizens of the state of the city and also the people that utilize the Highway 24 corridor. We're going to have, or she's going to have 5 full-time employees, of which two of the employees were previously employed with the prior regime. 3 others are going to be new to your city, but have extensive liquor experience. Thank you. All of which are going to be tip certified. And with that, they understand the Colorado Liquor Code, at least what applies to them and how it relates to their employment with her. They know that they're going to card everybody below the age of 40 years, anybody who looks under the age of 40 years until they get to know them. 5 types of IDs that she's going to accept: state driver's license or a state issued ID from any of the 50 states of our fantastic nation. Passport, a green card, or a military ID are the only things that are going to be accepted by her. The people know to notify the police department of any disturbance inside or outside the premises. That's state statute. Everybody understands that. Also, not to sell to any persons that appear underage and who cannot provide a valid ID or a driver's license, something that can prove their age. We also understand that you're not supposed to, even if they are over the age of 21 and they provide a vertical ID, it's not allowed per state statute. Not to sell to intoxicated persons, and that entails anybody with slurred speech, watery eyes, blurred vision, odor of alcoholic beverage upon their breath, and anybody who's just damn drunk. You can't sell. There's a Gold Hill alcohol policy that each employee must sign as a condition of their employment. I didn't bring that, nor did I bring my glasses, so I can't show it to you on my cell phone because I can't see it. Any violation of such rule they will be immediately terminated. And with that, I turn it over to my beautiful wife, and she can say anything she would like.
Do you guys have any questions? I think you covered everything. Welcome.
Thank you.
What sort of vision do you have for your place over here?
We recently we've updated some lighting. It's kind of dark over there. We're gonna do lighting outside. We're working on that right now. We did lighting inside, just cleaning it up.
It's a lot less cluttered than it was. It was claustrophobic, but it appears a lot nicer now.
Awesome. All right. Well,
And we
welcome
do-
to town.
We do live in Littleton part-time and Westcliff part-time. So we're back and forth between the two houses each and every week. So we will be stopping by at least twice a week to oversee and make sure everything's looking good. Any questions? Will you grant our?
I think Suzanne's gonna ask us that question.
That's the next thing.
That's the next thing.
Somebody might say, I'll drink to that.
Suzanne, you have anyone signed up for this?
We have no one signed up for public hearing.
Okay. No one on Zoom.
No, ma'am.
All right, council, can I get a motion?
I'll move to approve the transfer of a retail liquor license for Gold Tier Wine and Liquor as presented.
I'll second.
Council, you may vote.
You'll see it on here in a second.
Thank you, council. Motion has passed unanimously.
Thanks, guys.
We'll be
Thank you, Mike.
in touch.
If you guys have any questions, give us a ring.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, council.
Come for tasting.
Okay, we're off to item number B, and that's ordinance 1432, the moratorium, and our city attorney Nina Williams is going to present.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, this is the second reading for the moratorium, I'm sorry, the ordinance to continue the moratorium, which is already in effect. This is due to the fact to let staff implement the short-term rental ordinance and the application process. Right now, it is until June 24th, and it states that you can, if you were to pass it in its current form, that you can, of course, vote to end the moratorium earlier should you need. You can let me know if you have any questions.
Council, you have questions?
Well, can you talk a little bit about the initiative, the referendum initiative, and how that might affect the moratorium, if it does at all?
That's up to you guys. If the petition, there's a petition right now and it's to repeal the ordinance, if there were enough signatures, that would and then it would go to a special election. And then if a majority of the voters voted to approve that, then the ordinance would not go into effect. Right now, the ordinance that you passed is in abeyance, right?
We call it, it's suspended.
Suspended.
Yeah.
So in other words, if you were to not vote for this ordinance or if right now that ordinance is suspended, and if this special election were to go forward and ultimately succeed, then it would go back to the code that you have right now, that you had before July, before the moratorium.
Can I get a clarification there? So, from what I understand.
I
this
was
is a
going to clarify.
referendum to, okay, I'll let you clarify. that.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're going to
Yep,
say.
I know you know.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, it's been a long day.
We were going to talk about it later on, but we'll talk about it now.
Okay.
That if the petitioners do get enough signatures and the petition is deemed sufficient, it actually comes back to council. And council gets to decide whether they're going to repeal the ordinance or set it for election. I think that's the clarification.
That's
we're
what I
looking
wanted
for.
to hear out loud,
Okay.
yes.
And yes, it's called reconsideration, correct? Sorry. That's
So
awesome.
basically, the cleanest, easiest thing to do is to keep the moratorium as is. whether you like it or not, keep it in place through June. Because we can then come back and end it at any time once the referendum is over and staff has time to put everything into place.
Yeah, and I think the city said for the staff, it was around February 10th
Yeah.
that you needed.
Yeah,
time
council had
to-
asked, how much
Yeah.
time might be needed, and February 10th would be the earliest. We would prefer. June would be a little bit more palatable. We could make it happen if necessary. Of course, we had a meeting this morning, actually did some process mapping to do that. But would certainly appreciate a little more buffer if council felt that appropriate.
Well, the only comment I have to council is to consider what happens on January 1st with the initiative in play, a moratorium in play. What happens to all of the business, all of the
Business
current
licenses. Mhm.
owners of a short-term rental?
Rusty, that's already in there. So
Yes.
if the moratorium continues, that's already in the moratorium that current licenses will be reissued.
Yeah, it's section 2, is that in section 2? No, section 4 of the moratorium, current business licensees operating short-term rental businesses, they can apply for renewal of their business license and they're given a, what do we call it, a provisional license until June 30th.
So they'll be able to carry on as is.
So I hope everybody heard that.
I'm sure they did, Rusty.
But for the sake of staff also asking to have more time too, I think that that's important. I know that there are some of us that would like to just lift the moratorium and let things go on as was, but for the sake of clarity and no chaos, to continue it through June. And then we can repeal it at any time sooner if needed or necessary, not necessary, but if staff gets everything in play, or if the citizens referendum goes through, then we still have that chaos that we have to deal with. So keeping it in play right now, I think is the best idea. Anyone else would like to say anything, you're welcome to.
No, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance.
Time out.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Public comment?
Suzanne, do you have anyone signed up?
We do, ma'am. We have Arnie Sparnan signed up.
I'll come back in 5 minutes.
Then we have nobody signed up.
Okay,
Very
I'll
good.
make a motion to approve ordinance 1432 as written.
I'll second.
And I do have further questions, though. I'm sorry.
Sure, that's okay. You can ask.
Sorry, Rusty.
That's right. That's right.
We can have further
Um,
discussion.
If the moratorium stopped,
Mhm.
then on the 1st, they would be back to the old
Yes,
rules, which
Yes.
means they could be good for a year versus till June 30th.
yes. It would go back.
Well, it goes
Right.
back to nothing exists.
Well, if the ordinance isn't repealed, then it would go. They would get any business license within ordinance, so.
Right, but you gotta think of the
Yeah.
initiative separately.
Yeah.
If the memorandum is not extended on the 1st, they would be able to come in under the current rules
Status
of
quo.
the city code. They could all apply for their business license for a year.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
that's all I need.
it would be status quo
Yes.
prior to the
Yeah,
ordinance.
prior to the ordinance.
Right.
And prior to the moratorium.
Yes.
Okay, so I think we had a second.
That was my, it's been
I
second.
have a motion,
No,
motion from Councilmember Ott with the second from Mayor Pro Tem Case and Council may vote. Thank you, council. Motion has passed 6-1 with Councilmember Neal voting no.
Okay, very good. We are off to item 9C, which is the amended ordinance 1433. And we have Finance Director Aaron Basilati presenting.
All right, good evening. I have tonight for you ordinance number 1433 and 1434. Before I go into them, though, I will go into the amendments that were made to them at the November 17th council meeting. At the direction of council, we had the request to add $40,000 of expenditure appropriation to the lodging tax fund for a short-term rental economic impact study, which is GL code 230-491-9100, which is on page 95 of the budget book, which is a transfer out to the general fund. And then we had a subsequent increase in the expenditures in the general fund and the city manager budget in line 100-110-3500 professional services, which is page 39 of the budget book. Okay, so we have an ordinance appropriating sums of money to the various funds and the amounts and for the purposes set forth below for the city of Woodland Park, Colorado for the 2023 budget year for the general fund 100. And so the changes we have in this amendment, the budgeted revenues now are 14,408,282. And the current operating expenditures for city manager have been increased by 40,000 to 682,093. And our total current operating expenditures will now be $12,436,815. And our total general fund expenditures and transfers out will be $14,397,582,000. And that's for ordinance 1433.
Council, any questions?
Yeah. Aaron, there's something that got put in to the Economic Development Fund that I'm not clear on. And when I talked to Michael about it, I'm uncertain. I thought we were putting the $15,000 into economic development. I did not think we were putting it in, earmarking it for community investment projects. So can you clarify what your understanding of that is?
My understanding was that we were going to leave it in the city council budget, the $15,000 item, but we were going to change the name to economic development. So that the decision can be made at a later time. I think how the funds will be spent.
Yep, that's what I'm tracking too.
Is
That's
that
what we
you
did
understood?
discuss, Robert. Yeah.
Okay. And then the second question I have is the 40,000 that we're appropriating now is based on the ordinance, which is to spend this money for research into the whole idea of short-term rentals. So we're just going to go ahead with that at this point, no matter what way this swings. Is that
And
my
I think if that's
understanding?
budgeted, Robert,
Was
it's
that
budgeted, but if it goes another way, well, then
We don't
I would just
spend
go
it.
back to the, yeah,
Right, right.
go back to general fund. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Just wouldn't spend the money.
Yep.
Okay, well, those are my two questions. Oh, and there was
Right.
a third one I have, and that is I've got a reserve in here of 433,000. I've just made that note.
That's lodging tax. That's the lodging tax.
Oh, that's
fund
the lodging
balance
tax
that we'd
reserve.
appropriate the 40,000 out of.
Correct.
Correct, okay. And you have showed these entries, if I understand, in both of these ordinances, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, very good.
Any further questions?
No.
Suzanne, do we have anyone signed up for this
We
item?
do, we have Bob Carlson.
Okay,
I'm Bob Carlson, I live at 1155 Windflower Lane, Woodland Park, Colorado. And I have just a statement, some requests to council concerning the budget. I have no problems with these numbers other than our Tabor reserve of 3% applies to that full 14 million, which includes the money we collect for the education. And why is Woodland Park paying reserves on them? But that's just a aside. On behalf of the residents and small businesses of the city of Woodland Park, I'm requesting city council to establish both a floor of 10% and a ceiling of 17% for the unrestricted fund balance reserve, which currently stands at 2,685,106 or 23.7%. At current projections, reserves exceeding 17% are approximately $761,000. through the end of 2022. The amount will increase considerably when actual 2022 numbers are reported. The actual 22 revenue data will be available for the 22 fiscal year in February 23, as reflected in the December 22 tax revenue report. By establishing this policy, council affirms the conservative principle established by Tabor that limits excessive reserves. I request council refund excess reserves to our property tax paying residents and small businesses in proportion to their share of the excess. In doing so, the council will also be setting the pathway for a more realistic budget projection under the use it or lose it approach. Past budgets and indeed this budget have underestimated revenues and overestimated expenditures, with the balance adding to the reserves. In February 2023, council should update the projections for 2023 budget revenues to reflect at least an 8.8% growth over 2022 as actual amounts, and then revise the projected 2024 and beyond at the appropriate levels for inflation and growth. Final expenditure numbers, although unaudited, will also be available then. The audit due months later makes no significant change to either revenues or expenditures, so the city can take action in February 23 to refund the excess revenues. Good. There will be those on council who believe that this will expose the city to financial risk. However, the only time actual revenues were less than the balanced budget revenues and expenditures was in 2009 during the Great Recession, where the difference was about $200,000. This is easily accommodated by instituting temporary hiring freeze. Even with the Waldo Canyon fire in 2012 and the floods in 2013, actual revenues exceeded the budget numbers. An analysis of the reserves of affected cities in Colorado allowed the council to pass a resolution in 2014 establishing a 10% reserve floor. Subsequent councils increased the reserve to 17%. That's all I need for this one. No, any questions? Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Suzanne, is there anyone else?
There's not. Thank you.
All right. Council, can I get a motion?
I'll move to approve ordinance number 1433, series 2022, appropriating funds for the general fund as presented this evening.
I'll second it.
Thank you, council. You may vote. Thank you, council. Motion has passed unanimously.
All right, on to D.
Thank you, council. Next, we have ordinance number 1434, which has the same amendments that we just discussed, where we have an additional 40,000 to the lodging tax fund for expenditures being transferred out to the general fund. So the only change from the last time this was presented on the 17th is that the lodging tax fund now has a transfer out of $524,235, which is an increase of 40,000.
Council, any questions?
Nope.
Suzanne, is there anyone signed up for item D?
There is. We have Arnie Sparnans.
Good evening. My name is Arnie Sparnans. I live at 2621 Vista Glen Court. And so I just want to start off with, my comments are independent of whether ordinance 1431 is repealed or not. And so I'll express my concern about adding $40,000 to fund an economic impact study of STRs in Woodland Park. We can demonstrate some fiscal responsibility and simply drop the added line item from the budget. Why would we want the city to fund STR industry propaganda? The reality, our finance department should already have the answer. We just need to ask. If you want to know nothing more than STR related dollars flowing into the city, it's simple enough. In lieu of having the STR related lodging taxes from the city, this, which we haven't seen yet, let's just make a generous assumption that that amount is $200,000. If we multiply that by 10, we have a good estimate of the total dollars spent on STRs, or about $2 million. If we then use an extremely generous tourism multiplier of about 3x, when in reality, because of leakage, the multiplier is probably about closer to 1x, we can say the economic impact of STRs is $6 million. So what? I mean, that's all the consultants will do, but they'll create the illusion of credibility and the illusion of precision. There'll be nothing credible on the impact to the workforce housing stock. There'll be nothing about the intrinsic cost to community character. What decisions will we be able to make based on the study? Without knowing what actions can result from a study, what's the point? Will lodging tax collections be used to subsidize affordable housing? What about payment to folks to convert STRs to attainable long-term rental properties? Or do large dollar amounts indicate what a significant commercial enterprise STRs represent? And they should be taxed along with hotels at a commercial property tax rate. What is the impact to workforce housing, and how does that adversely affect our other businesses? And finally, what is the price tag the city is willing to sacrifice the property rights of all of our residential homemakers? Homeowners, some of whom are homemakers. Is it $1 million? Is it $10 million? It really should be no amount of money merits destroying a city and its community character. I bring forth and I'll submit to you an example of an STR economic impact study prepared earlier this year for Colorado Mountain Towns. They boldly claim $1 billion. So what? Much more telling, put inside here is a letter from 13 county commissioners, of counties that were impacted by that. And they talk about all the different holes in the study, and they talk about how they gloss over the biggest concern, which is the impact to adverse impact to workforce housing. And the study itself casually dismisses it as a non-issue. Really, do we want to waste our taxpayer money on a similar piece of STR industry propaganda? And so what I would propose, rather than spending $40,000, we look to our finance department to provide the data regarding STR generated lodging tax collections. From there, we should reactivate the community engagement team, work with the planning commission, and engage with the new economic development director and their assistant. And together we can do this, and we get to save $40,000. I think it's a good way to start the new year. So we can do it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Arnie.
I think Aaron said he'll do it for like 20,000.
It's still, comes out of the pocket. So.
Just a joke, Arnie.
I'd love to see that. Yeah. Who funded this?
No one else signed up?
Oh.
Okay, council, any questions for Aaron?
Well, just clarifying, whether, great points, but from what you were saying before, whether whatever way this goes, it just goes back into the general fund if it's, if things change. So, yeah. Okay.
Well, I just want to
Goes back-
clarify that it would go back in the lodging tax fund, in the fund balance, and we're transferring it.
And then can transfer it to the general fund.
It won't be
To
spent.
cover the expense.
Right.
If we incur it.
Council, can I get a motion then?
And I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 1434, series 2022 as written.
I'll second it.
Thank you. May I vote, council? Thank you, council. Motion has passed unanimously.
Okay, we are off to item E.
And thank you, council.
And E is a big deal.
Yes, it is. We have ordinance number 1435, which is a series 2022 to amend 2022 expenditure appropriations, which is a supplemental ordinance. This is the Memorial Park Certificate of Participation Series 2015 payoff of $2,425,000 in the fund balance reserve designated using $1.95 million that the city has set aside and an additional $475,000 of fund balance to pay off the Memorial Park debt. We are proposing to make this payment on December 27, 2022.
Council, any questions? Comments?
I just had one. So if I'm correct, this will put us at 17% of the general fund unrestricted balance when we're done, right?
23.
Yes, I
Yeah.
believe it's
23
23%.
Oh, 23%. After we pay off the park, we're at 23%.
Correct.
Okay, right.
And I'll
And I-
just also say that it's been a goal of this council and previous council that Mr. Zuluaga, Hillary and me, Rusty have been on. And I'm sorry, Catherine. To also work towards some reduction in the debt with the pool. So I don't think our savings are over. And I don't think that our pay down is over. And I think that that is a goal of this council still. And so the pool debt is what we're working on next. So I just thought I'd throw that out there just to show that we're not just sitting around on a pot of money. We're actually working to put it to work to save money. So thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that. And something that you don't see in what we've just approved is Ben Schmidt has been working behind the scenes on something he's going to present here later, but it's a huge impact in terms of savings, potential savings to the city. And this is for your benefit, Bob. We didn't appropriate all the spending for roadworks in 2022. And, like, well, where are we putting that money or allocating that money? What he's been working on, he's going to present it here in a little while, is a intergovernmental agreement with CDOT that on the research road work that needs to be done that the city agreed to apparently 25 years ago, and we end up having to saddle the bill for it, which I wasn't too happy about. But the work he's doing with PPACG is going to save us something in the neighborhood of $101.5 million on that project if all the grants come through. So the amount that we're going to have to pay out of pocket will be significantly less. So we're saving here $800,000 in interest on this motion before us, but we're going to save. In the process of what's happening with our staff, we're going to save a significant amount in the roadworks, and that needs to be championed. It's like, wow, good stuff. So I just want to say that.
Council, anything further?
Comment.
Suzanne, do we have anyone signed up for E?
Not for that, no.
Okay, very good.
Bob, did you want to?
I just wanted to respond to Robert's comment.
Bob, why don't you come on up to the podium?
No, I was very delighted in what Ben has been able to do. I talked to him before the meeting, and there's so much more he can report too, other than just that section of the road. And I'm encouraging him to do that when he gets up here. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. All right, then. Council, can I get a motion?
I make a motion to approve ordinance 1435 as written.
I second it.
Okay, who wants that one?
I do.
All right, it doesn't matter.
Robert?
You can have, it was your idea to pay.
It was my idea, that's true.
Council, you may vote. Thank you, council. Motion has passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Very good.
Good job, Aaron.
You did it.
All right, we're off to
Good job,
item
Aaron.
10A. And that's resolution 896, and city engineer Ben Schmidt is presenting.
Before you get
Go,
started.
Ben.
I'm gonna say, Ben, before you get started, I like your haircut. It looks like you traded your hair for Aaron to grow his out. So.
Staff, right?
It's a mountain thing.
Mayor and council, before Ben gets started, there's just one correction that I have to make for the record. that was brought to me, to my attention from council. Resolution number 896. As we do often, we use other municipalities' items. We steal and we plagiarize and we cut and
Absolutely.
paste. And in this resolution, we failed to remove the city of Fairplay. So we have fixed that and it now says the city of Woodland Park. Thank you.
Very good.
No need to reinvent the wheel.
All right, Ben, go ahead.
All right, well, thank you. Good evening. This is probably the most exciting council meeting of the entire year for me to be able to present this intergovernmental agreement. So as stated earlier, this is for our project for the Highway 67 improvements next to Tamarack Parkway, which were the turn lanes that were originally budgeted in 2022 to be completed. And the city and the taxpayers were on the hook for that whole budget amount. But after working with PPACG and CDOT in detail, attending every meeting and having some great correspondence and relationships with those folks here. And we stand on the shoulders of giants. My predecessors before me built some excellent relationships with CDOT as well. But we were able to convert a existing project that was outlined in the TIF to cover this project, which basically took it from being close to $1.9 million the taxpayers had to pay for, and we only have to pay for 25% of that if we move forward with this intergovernmental agreement. So this is hugely exciting. And then alluding to Bob's comment earlier about all the great work that's happening in Woodland Park, and sorry, this is expanding beyond this scope, but it's a big deal. Between the mill and overlay that's going to be happening through town, all of basically Highway 24 through the center of town is going to look and ride brand new. There's going to be ADA ramps are going to be replaced by CDOT. Also further south of our Highway 67 project, CDOT is taking an original design that the city had done close to 8 to 10 years ago. And they took that whole project over. They are paying for that project 100%. And so the widening and the drainage improvements along that corridor of 67 are also going to be done. So we are hoping in my correspondence with CDOT that when we put these all out to bid, that there may be one contractor that's real interested in all of it and everybody wins in the savings there. So lots of really big things for transportation happening in the city of Woodland Park. And I'm just really happy because $1.5 million goes a long way towards the rest of the projects in the city.
Good job.
Yep, great work.
Excellent. Thank you.
Is that other project between Evergreen and Kelly Road? Is that what you're referring to?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Which it's 2024 that's scheduled for, right? Or was scheduled for?
It's actually scheduled to go out to bid in the middle of 2023. And so our project, because we're at 100% design, we need to do a little bit more environmental clearance if we execute this IGA for the requirements of the IGA. But our project should go to bid about the same time as in 2023 as that project does.
And that's the merge you're talking about with that's the umbrella they're putting this under, that you got this, the Research Road or Tamarack Park under?
Well, that's a good question. They're technically two separate projects, but they will both look like CDOT projects to folks driving through there, even though one's a local agency project with a contribution for this IGA and the other one's fully a CDOT project.
I see.
And so from a driving perspective, it's nice because you just pull the Band-Aid off once and that corridor is most of the work's done. So.
Council, anything further?
Excellent job.
Okay, Suzanne, is there anyone signed up for this?
Not this item.
All right. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 896 as presented this evening.
I'll second it.
Thank you, council. You may vote. Thank you, council. Motion is passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, Ben.
All right, we're off to 10B, Resolution 897, and we have Aaron Basilati back.
All right, just one more. We have resolution number 897, series 2022 tonight, which is a resolution levying general property taxes. Sorry, I gotta move this. For the year 2022 to help defray the cost of government for the city of Woodland Park, Colorado for the 2023 budget year. This resolution keeps the mill levy, the mill levy at a total of 15.75 mils for the city of Woodland Park. And this has remained unchanged since 2020.
Council, any questions, comments?
No.
Suzanne, is there anybody signed up for item 10B?
There is Bob Carlson.
Think I would fit the time allotted, so I split it in two. Actually, I did two different subjects. This one deals with my recommendations or your consideration on the mill rate. Earlier, I proposed refunding excessive reserve to our taxpayers. This would cap reserves at 17%. This takes care of excessive reserves accumulated at the end of 2022. However, now I turn to the excess reserves that will occur in 2023 due to estimating revenues and overestimating expenses. I also recommend that council reduce the 2023 property tax mill rate, thus reducing property tax payments throughout the year, rather than wait for these excess reserves to be refunded in February 2024. If any of that actually happens. But these are my recommendations. I would say a new mill rate conservatively at 14%. If I was not conservative, I'd go down to 10. But anyway, given our current generous fiscal situation, I'm recommending that businesses also be allowed to keep the 3% sales tax they collect on behalf of the city, as does every other taxing entity in Teller County and probably across Colorado. The council decided to withhold the 3% in 1996 due to our very tight fiscal situation in the city, as the city had approved a bond to chip seal all our city streets. That bond was paid off in 2015. Our financial situation has only gotten much better. So why should we continue to withhold something that was instituted just to take care of the financial situation at the time when everybody else is getting? Now, okay, I have a philosophical note too. What I wanted to say was that why should the city be in a better fiscal situation than the majority of its citizens? The city is paying off its COP, which is essentially a mortgage, 13 years earlier, which you just decided on. How many residents can afford to pay off their mortgages 13 years earlier? With current inflation, our taxpayers can barely afford to pay for gas, groceries, and their utility bills, much less property taxes. When a council member proposed a slight reduction in the property tax, the city replied that these revenues would be decline $35,000. And when it was asked by how the city would use these funds, the city manager replied that they could be used for community events. Nothing the city has done recently indicates that they are even close to experiencing financial difficulties, whereas our taxpayers are experiencing considerable pain. So I just wanted to put that out there, that we do need to think about our taxpayers. It's not your money, it's theirs. Okay.
Thanks, Bob. Suzanne, is there anyone else?
No.
Council, anything further?
You know, I would like to take up the idea of the 14% mill rate. I did propose that very thing last year. And I'm happy to say that council and the city staff have really worked well with the taxpayer dollars, at least in my opinion. with the taxpayer dollars for us to pay off the park is one giant step in that direction. And I certainly would like to see us do the same thing with the pool. The challenge with the pool is that it just seems to keep increasing in terms of its cost, its operational cost to us. So I think at this point fiscally, it is, this council has, at least to my satisfaction, showed responsibility, and I'm okay to postpone that recommendation of a 14%. And let's get some more debt behind us, because your point is well taken. The city is receiving good revenues, and if we don't put the brakes on, they're going to spend them on something. But I think we're moving in the right direction on getting fiscally responsible. When we compare ourselves to Teller County, who have no debt, you know, I'm great to see that we're heading in that same direction ourselves. So
Yeah, and Robert, I'd just like to say too, that I agree. So, you know, Bob says that that's not our money, it's the citizens' money.
Correct.
We're citizens as well and pay taxes. But when the citizens vote on something and they vote to pay for something, we've got to pay that debt before we start, you know, reducing those taxes. So those are the consequences of getting a pool and pushing for that to be done, knowing that's a very expensive thing. And yes, there is you know, we can't pay that off early before what, 2026, I think.
2025.
But we need to have the reserves so that when we can do exactly what we do with the park and save that money in interest. So, and then we can look at reducing those mill levy taxes. So.
And at the very least, we can pay down, even if we
Right,
can't
exactly.
pay off. As we have the
Yeah.
ability, we can pay early.
Yeah.
And
So you should know that
Yeah.
if you vote on something and you want to have something, a big piece of infrastructure, like a municipal pool, that's fine, that's great. Just remember that years down the road, when you don't want to pay the taxes for it, you gotta finish that off. So, thank you.
yeah. And I think the only one other comment I'd add to that is we didn't do it on this budget cycle, but I would certainly like to see us do it in our next budget cycle. And that is to take a significant portion of reserves and apply it specifically towards the pool pay down. I would like to see that in next year as another step to really get these behind us so we can really genuinely look at what that mill rate is.
So if we reduce the principal on the pool, Aaron, does that reduce the interest we're gonna pay on that? I know we can't pay it off early, but
At the end of 2025, we're able to do a refunding. So if there was a substantial amount of money put aside, we could pay down and then do a refunding.
okay, thank you.
if interest rates
Yes.
support
It says
that.
interest rates, yeah.
They're
Yeah.
better.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Because there's, when you do refi like that, it does have come at significant costs. But if the interest rate there's enough difference there, it certainly makes sense to do that.
And our interest rate is pretty reasonable on that debt at this
Correct.
time, so it would have to go down quite a bit.
Good luck with that.
There's hope.
But we don't want to be swimming. That's right. Swimming, I like that.
That's a
Thanks
Michael
for that.
joke.
Well, that was really good, Frank.
Oh,
Good job.
bad joke, yeah, really.
All right, council, can I get a motion then?
I move to approve resolution 897, series 2022, a resolution levying general property tax for the year of 2022.
I'll second
as
it.
Proposed.
Council, you may vote. Thank you, council. Motion is passed unanimously.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. All right, we're off to reports. Hopefully we can get done before 9. So we don't have to take a break.
Yeah.
All right, I just have a couple of announcements to make. The first is Friday, December 2nd. We have Winter Day in the park at Memorial Park from 3:30 until 5 p.m. There'll be hot chocolate, pictures with Santa, a petting zoo, and the Elf Scramble. And then we have on the next day, Saturday, December 3rd, breakfast with Santa, at the UPass Cultural Center from 8 a.m. until 11 a.m. And then we have December 3rd and 4th, the Tweeds Holiday Home Tour is happening from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. There is on December 3rd, the lighter side of Christmas parade at 6 p.m. in downtown Woodland Park, and there will be fireworks. We also have December 13th, the State of the City breakfast at 7:30 a.m. bright and early until 9 at the Ute Pass Cultural Center. December 23rd, we have Parents' Night Out at the Aquatic Center. That'll give you a chance to do last minute Christmas shopping, and pre-registration is required. Also, we have the holiday toy and food drive here at City Hall and also at the police department. There's a table here at City Hall set up outside of the planning department to collect non-perishable food and new unwrapped children's toys. Anyone's welcome to drop off donations here at City Hall Monday through Thursday from 7:30 in the morning until 5 p.m. and on Fridays from 7:30 until 4 p.m. And you can leave the items at the front desk and they will make sure that they get taken back to the table in the back by planning. And the police department is collecting items 24/7 in their lobby. So you can go there anytime and drop off donations. And that is through December 19th. So that's food, non-perishable food and new unwrapped children's toys. And I think that's all I have. So happy holidays, everyone. And hope you all have a happy new year because we're also going to ask to cancel December 15th meeting. So.
What? Is that official?
That's official.
Coming.
It's coming.
Oh, it's coming.
We'll check in
Hold
with
your
Michael to
horses.
make sure, but
And Mayor, is the list you've written, because it's so long, is that published or printed somewhere?
yeah, so these are all public announcements and I think they're on our website also.
They're on
in
the
the
website,
chamber.
they're on the chamber's website. That's where we gather our information from.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Councilmember Case.
Thank you. I have nothing but to wish everyone a wonderful holiday season, and it's been a pleasure.
And you're sponsoring the petting zoo.
I know, isn't that just fitting?
It sure is.
You know, everyone knows how much I love animals and how much I've worked to help homeless animals. And when I found out there was a petting zoo, I just couldn't resist. So I look forward to it on tomorrow, actually.
Yep.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Connors.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple things. Tomorrow, I'm going to be representing the city at the First Striker Brigade Combat Team Change of Responsibility at Fort Carson. So that's going to be entertaining. And then the Veterans Breakfast, December 3rd, 8 o'clock in the morning to Historic Ute. So hope to see all the veterans there. Merry Christmas and hope everybody has a good New Year. Thank you.
Councilmember Nakai.
Yeah, all I have is happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah.
Councilmember Neal.
Happy holidays to everybody. I have nothing.
Okay. Councilmember Ott.
I have nothing either, so I hope you guys also have a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Councilmember Zulaga.
Well, the Keep Woodland Park Beautiful has given us a perfect representation here, so there's nothing more I can add to that, except encouragement for us to move it along in terms of funding. And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and Jesus is the reason for the season.
Very good. City Attorney.
I don't have anything other than to echo Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everybody.
City Manager.
Yes, absolutely. Happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Happy Kwanzaa, absolutely. And if there are others, those two. Is the council okay with canceling the December 15th meeting? We have no public hearings. We have no urgent business that we know of.
Yes.
Let me think about it. Yeah, I got to think about
I
that.
know it might really put you out. We can come and just chat and have the holiday party.
Fighting.
Have fun.
All right. No, I'm good.
More to do anything. You're gonna have that Mike guy who's got the recent permit come as well? Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So I'm
Santa come early.
We just
I'm-
need a consensus.
I'm going to choose to hear that as a yes.
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you.
You sure, David?
Where's the dad joke? I'm sorry. We're gonna skip the next movie.
I was hoping there's going to be like a 40-foot tall deer like that one at the petting zoo. I would definitely go for that. Or the animals pet you, maybe. A bigger.
Yeah.
We need a bigger lot of things.
I'm not quite.
On that note, we did have the serious question, did council have to its satisfaction the explanation of the STR petition process? That was something that came up earlier. I know we talked through it a little bit. Does council feel that it has a sufficient understanding of how that might work?
I think I do.
I do.
I understand the process. What is the litmus test for determining the sufficiency of the petition?
Suzanne?
That's a great question. So just to preface it by saying the petitions, so everyone knows they're due back into the clerk's office 12/27, December 27th by 5 p.m. There needs to be a minimum of 714 signatures on it for me to even review the petitions. Once we see there's 714 signatures on it, we start the process of validating all those signatures. The clerk's office has 30 days to do that. And so I have a team of staff. We will go through each signature, match it to the voter registration, make sure they're valid signatures, valid addresses, completely filled out, signify that it's a good signature count, and if they have enough, I'll deem the petition as certified, and then it comes to the council, the next council meeting after I'm able to do that. So my hope is, the first week of January, we'll start, if we get that, we'll start looking at them, and maybe I can bring it to you by your second meeting in January if we can get it done. Did that answer your question, sir?
I'll follow up offline.
Okay.
That was a great explanation, and that's the process, but I have a different question that I can get with you offline.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Anyone else have any questions?
I just want to ask Cindy, what kind of animals are we having at the petting zoo?
I asked that question.
Frank wanted to know.
Well, in the past, and Grace, you can help me with this too, but I think there's been a donkey and a sheep. And do you remember what else was there, Grace? Yes. Of course she does.
And
A llama.
alpaca.
A llama?
Are there going to be any dogs?
You can bring your dog.
I'm gonna see, I'm sure there'll be plenty on leashes.
Good.
Dogs really aren't petting in that period.
They love.
Mine is.
petting.
I'm usually busy boiling water for hot chocolate, so I don't get out there too much, but
Okay,
thanks, Grace.
everyone come visit. It'll be fun.
All right, so, yep, 3:30 tomorrow afternoon, evening, please be here at Memorial Park for all of that. And that's all we had. We will see you January 5th.
Excellent. This meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Are you going to attend this? I sent you an email.